guys. This trivia show is going to be a studio-like version where I'll have a little more background information in regards to the questions. You can find these where you're seeing it, obviously, but on my YouTube channel, which is Grateful Trivia, please subscribe and please check out all the past shows, as well as the studio versions I record and put there. I'm also going to put these on Facebook and continue to do the live versions. I want to start by thanking the bands that have graced us with their music in the background of these questions. And they are Rabbit Hole Handbook and Jamectomy. They are Hernan Perez on guitar, Brian Post on bass, Elliot Jackson, Scott Roush on keys, and Cameron LaForest on drums. I hope everyone's having a great day wherever you're at. And let's start this show. The first question: in what city does Route 66 end to the west? Again, in what city does Route 66 end to the west? It's known as the Main Street of America and was established on November 11th, 1926, originating in Chicago. Although different highways began in Virginia Beach that attached to it. Again, that was, in what city does Route 66 end to the west? It was mostly flat due to the times, although there were areas near Oatman, Arizona, Black Mountain, where they would have locals drive that part. And there are some great songs such as Get Your Kicks on Route 66 and John Steinbeck's novel Grapes of Wrath symbolized it as escape and loss. Again, that was, in what city does Route 66 end to the west? The I-40 out west replaced much of it, although you can still drive many parts. There's some cool parts in Arizona like the Painted Desert and Meteor Crater that are off of it. Many restaurants and attractions in all the states as well. And again, that was, in what city does Route 66 end to the west? It ends in Santa Monica at the Santa Monica Pier. And let's move on to the next question. In what book was the term Big Brother coined? Again, what book coined the term Big Brother? In the novel, people are constantly reminded that they were being watched by Big Brother in the totalitarian state of Oceania. It's never disclosed if Big Brother's a real person or if he ever was. He's presented and portrayed on posters as a man in his mid-40s, and he led the party. Again, that was, in what book was the term Big Brother coined? The party has a group running everything with offices such as the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Plenty, and the Ministry of Peace, which basically accomplished the opposite of their titles. Again, that was, what book coined the term Big Brother? These days, Big Brother is used to describe any prying or overly controlling authority figure. And again, that was, what book coined the term Big Brother? And that was a book called 1984 by George Orwell. And the next question: what company is named after the Japanese number 6? Again, what company is named after the Japanese number 6? It's a brand of hardware digital media players manufactured in America. They offer access to streaming media content from various online services. The first model was developed in collaboration with Netflix in 2008. Again, that was what company is named after the Japanese number 6. 1 through 5 is Ichi, Ni, San, Shi, Go. Again, that was what company is named after the Japanese number 6. That would be Ichi, Ni, San, Shi, Go. Roku is named after the Japanese number 6. And the next question is, what is the only state that has declined the Olympics? Again, what is the only state that has declined the Olympics? It was rejected by voters in 1976 for Winter Games. After that, it became much more popular to refuse the games, after voters and locals saw how much money it took and how many structures were left abandoned afterwards. Again, that was what's the only state that has declined the Olympics. Some other places that declined the Olympics after that were Innsbruck, Rome, Hamburg, Oslo, and Bern, all declining the Olympics. And the question was, what is the only state that has declined the Olympics? That is Denver, Colorado, declined the Olympics. What we're listening to right now is Jamectomy. Check them out if you ever get a chance. And the next question, what is the largest island in the world that is not a continent? Again, what is the largest island in the world that is not a continent? It likely misses out on continent status because of its population size. It's 836,000 square miles with a population of just 56,225. Again, that is, what is the largest island in the world that is not a continent? Following it in size is New Guinea, Borneo, Madagascar, Baffin, and Sumatra. Again, that was, what is the largest island in the world that is not a continent? That would be Greenland. The next question is, in political history, what was the domino theory? Again, in political history, what was the domino theory? The theory began after World War II, and Dwight Eisenhower popularized the term. It was later used as justification for the Korean War and Vietnam. Again, that was, in political history, what was the domino theory? It was a popular theory in the U.S. from the 50s to the 80s, but now it has finally been disproven because nations are not dominoes. And again, that was, in political history, what was the domino theory? And that was, if one country was communist, the neighboring countries would become communist as well. Disproven. And the next question. Rosa Parks famously refused to give up her seat on a bus in which city? Again, Rosa Parks famously refused to give up her seat on a bus in which city? Rosa Parks was born in 1913 in Tuskegee. Her mother was a teacher who valued education, and she attended high school until she had to drop out to take care of her grandmother and then her mother. Her husband encouraged her to go back to school, which she did, finished high school, and then became a chapter secretary of the NAACP. Again, that was, Rosa Parks famously refused to give up her seat on a bus in which city? That was not her first run-in with that bus driver. 12 years earlier, he refused to let her enter the bus and grabbed her arm, after which she left. On this day, she refused to give up her seat for a white man. And this was a major impetus in the civil rights movement that followed and continues to this day. And again, that was Rosa Parks famously refused to give up her seat on a bus. In which city? And that would be Montgomery. Next one. The clothing brand DKNY was started by what designer? And again, that is the clothing brand DKNY was started by which designer? The brand is classified as accessible luxury for women and men. It was founded in New York City in 1984. She worked at Anne Klein for 15 years, including 10 as a head designer. And in 1984, her and her husband were offered the opportunity to open their own business by Anne Klein. And again, that was the clothing brand DKNY was started by what designer? And the answer is Donna Karan. And the next question. Which fast food chain has had drive-thrus for the longest? Again, which fast food chain has had drive-thrus for the longest? We love this particular place. It started in Baldwin, California in 1948 by Harry and Esther Snyder. They mostly stayed in Southern California for years until expanding throughout California. And again, that was which fast food chain has had drive-thrus for the longest. Eventually, it expanded into Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Texas, Oregon, and Colorado. And it's now owned by the grandchild and has never been franchised. Again, that was which fast food chain has had drive-thrus for the longest. It's known for its employee-centered policies, such as starting employees at $14 an hour. There are now over 300 restaurants in the western U.S. Again, which fast food chain has had drive-thrus for the longest? That would be In-N-Out Burger. Next question. What was the first U.S. state to make Juneteenth an official holiday? Again, what was the first U.S. state to make Juneteenth an official holiday? It was first celebrated in 1979. This particular state also still glorifies members of the Confederacy, and it was the last place where slaves were still held. Again, that was what was the first U.S. state to make Juneteenth an official holiday? It was just made a national holiday this year. And the first state to celebrate Juneteenth was Texas. And the next one. Who was the first European-born player to win the Hart Trophy as MVP of the NHL? Again, who was the first European-born player to win the Hart Trophy as the MVP of the NHL? He was one of the first players to defect from the former Soviet Union to play in the NHL. And while playing for the Detroit Red Wings, he won 3 Stanley Cups and won the Hart Trophy in 1994. Again, that was who was the first European-born player to win the Hart Trophy as the MVP of the NHL. After playing for the Red Wings, he played with the Mighty Ducks, the Blue Jackets, and the Capitals He finished his career with 483 goals and was inducted into the NHL Hall of Fame in 2015. He was named one of the 100 greatest players to ever play in the NHL. And again, he was the first European-born player to win the Hart Trophy as the MVP of the NHL. That is Sergei Fedorov. On to the next one. Who has been on the cover of Playboy more than anyone else? Again, who has been on the cover of Playboy more than anyone else? I looked up some of the most expensive issues of Playboy of all time. The most expensive issue is the first one from December of 1953 with Marilyn Monroe on the cover. That one can be worth as much as $40,000. The second most expensive is the March 1980 issue with Bo Derek on the cover. Again, who has been on the cover of Playboy more than anyone else? The only man. There have been 10 total on there, but all of them with women. The only man to ever be on the cover of Playboy with no women was Hugh Hefner after his passing. And then the question was, who has been on the cover of Playboy more than anyone else? That was Pamela Anderson. She was on the cover 14 times. And the next question, what was the first major music concert benefit? Again, what was the first major music concert benefit? It was organized by George Harrison and Ravi Shankar, and it took place in 1971 at Madison Square Gardens and was attended by over 40,000 people. It was to raise money and awareness for East Pakistani refugees and had performers such as George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Ravi Shankar, Eric Clapton, Ringo Starr, Leon Russell, and Billy Preston. And again, what was the first major music concert benefit? And that was the concert for Bangladesh. And the next question. What is the largest maximum security prison in the U.S.? And again, what is the largest maximum security prison in the U.S.? With over 6,300 prisoners, with over 6,300 prisoners and 1,800 staff. 80% of the incarcerated are African American, and 85% of the prisoners are serving a life sentence. The average sentence is 89.9 years. It was given the nickname a gated community and sits on an ex-slave plantation in Louisiana. That's kind of crazy to have the biggest maximum security prison in the U.S. on an ex-slave plantation. And again, what is the largest maximum security prison in the U.S.? In the gift shop, they have a gift shop at this prison. There's a 20-foot picture of black men going to work in the fields, being watched over by a white woman with blonde hair, who is sitting on a horse with a gun. And again, what is the largest maximum security prison in the U.S.? That's Angola. This song here is Flowers by Rabbit Hole Handbook. And the next question. When the 13th Amendment was passed, it ended slavery with one exception. What was that exception? Again, when the 13th Amendment was passed, it ended slavery with one exception. What was that exception? After slavery was ended, there was only one way that it continued, and that was through this practice. Charges such as vagrancy would put people into a position of indentured servitude. They would lease these people from state to state to work for free or as close as possible. And again, that was when the 13th Amendment was passed. It ended slavery with one exception. What was that exception? With a much higher percentage of people of color being locked up, in essence, this is continued slavery. And again, that was when the 13th Amendment was passed. It ended slavery with one exception. What was that exception? That would be imprisoned people. So these last two questions. The largest maximum security prison in the U.S. sits on an ex-slave plantation, which is called a gated community. And when the 13th Amendment ended slavery, it did so for all people except imprisoned people. 85% of the people in Angola are serving life sentences, and 80% are African American. To me, this sounds fishy, and sure seems like they were fishing for a way to continue slavery, which they very well may have. But now we'll move on to the next question. What country put the first woman into space? Again, what country put the first woman into space? She was not only the first, but the youngest. She orbited the Earth 48 times and spent 3 days in space. She remains the only woman to have been on a solo space mission. And again, that was what country put the first woman into space? Before she joined the space program, she was a textile factory worker, an amateur skydiver. Again, that was which country put the first woman into space? Her name is Valentina Tereshkova. And the first country to put a woman into space is the Soviet Union. And we'll move on to the next question. Who was the last U.S. president that served in the military? Again, who was the last U.S. president that served in the military? 29 U.S. presidents have served in the military, with the first being our first president, George Washington. We're not counting the National Guard or people who didn't really show up, so that takes a few people out of the equation. And we've had a 5-star general in Eisenhower, and 13 held general rank. And again, that was who was the last U.S. president to serve in the military? That would be George W. Bush. Next question. What was the first U.S. company to pay $5 for an 8-hour workday? Again, what was the first U.S. company to pay $5 for an 8-hour workday? It was first adopted for men in 1914 and then expanded to women in 1916. The company also instilled the 5-day work week in 1926. Again, that was what was the first U.S. company to pay $5 for an 8-hour workday. After this decision was made, the owner and CEO said, "It's high time to rid ourselves of the notion that leisure for workmen is either lost time or class privilege." The first 8-hour workday law was enacted in Illinois. And again, that question was, what was the first U.S. company to pay $5 for an 8-hour workday? Oddly, this was also the last of the big three automakers to accept the union, but the first U.S. company to pay $5 for an 8-hour workday was Ford Motor Company. Next question. What was the first electric song released by Bob Dylan? Again, what was the first electric song released by Bob Dylan? It was on the March of 1965 album, Bring It All Back Home. At the Newport Folk Festival, which my father often talked about, the reaction of the crowd at that festival, he blew the crowd away by having a full electric set with the backing band, Paul Butterfield Band, among others. After 3 songs, which were first Maggie's Farm, then the song in question, and then it takes a lot to laugh and it takes a train to cry, Bob Dylan left the stage to booze and came back with an acoustic guitar, ending his show in tears with the songs Mr. Tambourine Man and It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. Again, what was the first electric song released by Bob Dylan? That was Like a Rolling Stone. Next question. What job sector has the most job availability in 2021? Again, what job sector has the most job availability in 2021? The states with the most job opportunities are Massachusetts, New York, and California in that order. There are opportunities in many sectors, but this one has the most. Again, that was what job sector has the most job availability in 2021. It also has the most turnover. The pandemic got a lot of people out of this industry, and many decided they were never going back. Again, that was what job sector has the most job availability in 2021. That would be restaurant and hospitality. Next question. What is the number one cause of bankruptcy in the U.S.? Again, what is the number one cause of bankruptcy in the U.S.? 62% of all bankruptcies are caused by this, and over 2 million are severely affected by it. After the top cause, the following causes are job loss, poor or excess use of credit, divorce or separation, and unexpected expenses. Again, that is, what is the number one cause of bankruptcy in the U.S.? And the answer is medical debts. And the next question, what is the largest animal with vertebrae that can reproduce without a mate? Again, what is the largest animal with vertebrae that can reproduce without a mate? The scientific name for this process is parthenogenesis. There are 80 known vertebrate species that give virgin birth. Most that give birth this way, though, are small invertebrates. Some, such as bees, wasps, and ants, alternate between sexual and asexual reproduction. Again, that was, what's the largest animal with vertebrae that can reproduce without a mate? Leopard sharks and some snakes also reproduce this way, but studies show that offspring are healthier when produced through traditional reproduction. Again, that was, what is the largest animal with vertebrae that can reproduce without a mate? And that is the Komodo dragon. And the next question. Which U.S. state has had the highest percentage of population increase in the last 10 years? Again, which U.S. state has had the largest percentage of population increase in the last 10 years? The 2020 census shows This state's population has grown by 18.4%. The U.S. population has grown by 8% over the last 10 years. Again, that is, which U.S. state has had the largest population increase over the last 10 years? The states that follow it are Idaho, then Texas, North Dakota, Nevada, Colorado, Florida, and Washington, all above or around 15%. Arizona has increased by 12%. And again, that was which U.S. state has had the highest percentage population increase in the last 10 years? The answer is Utah. Next question. What is the largest food and beverage company on the planet based on revenue? Again, what is the largest food and beverage company on the planet based on revenue? The company brought in $113.5 billion. The company does much of its work in beef and eggs and is based in the U.S., but operates in 70 countries. Following it are companies such as Nestle, which brought in $63.8 billion, and then companies such as Cisco, Tyson, and Pepsi Company, which are known, and then some less known, such as Mondelez, which brought in $25 billion, producing snacks such as biscuits, chocolate gum, and candy, among other products. And again, that is, what is the largest food and beverage company on the planet based on revenue? And that is Cargill. Next question. Who was the only person in NBA history to be named Most Valuable Player, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year? Again, who is the only person in NBA history to be named Most Valuable Player, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year? Frank Layden, Pat Riley, and Red Auerbach won Coach of the Year and Executive Year, but never MVP. He was born in Indiana and went to Indiana State University and played in a very well-known NCAA championship against Michigan State and Magic Johnson. Again, that was, who was the only person in NBA history to be named the Most Valuable Player, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year. He won the MVP with the Celtics and Coach of the Year and Executive of the Year with the Indiana Pacers. That would be Larry Bird. And next question. What percentage of currency is in physical form worldwide? Again, what percentage of currency is in physical form worldwide? The rest only exist on a computer hard drive and electronic bank accounts around the world. There's a total of about 1.5 trillion in the U.S. that is physical currency in circulation, and 14 trillion in total money supply of physical currency. Again, that was, what percentage of currency is in physical form worldwide? And 1.2 quadrillion worldwide is in investments, derivatives, and cryptocurrencies. Only 8% of currency is in physical form worldwide. And the final question for this show is, name a character that was given 5 fingers. We'll end it on a fun one. Name a character that was given 5 fingers on The Simpsons. It's not a character that would be easily guessed. One theory about The Simpsons is that all of the characters are constructed by humans, and therefore the humans are the characters referred to in the question. And again, name a character that was given 5 fingers on The Simpsons, and that would be God or Jesus. I want to thank you all for hanging out and checking this out. I appreciate everybody who plays along and enjoys it. I want to thank in particular, again, the bands, Rabbit Hole Handbook and Jamectomy, which is Brian, Hernan, Elliot, and Cameron. I want to thank Elisa for being supportive of this from the very beginning. We had an amazing trip just last week. I want to thank my mom, my dad, and my brother for all the support they've given me over the years. And I want to thank everybody. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week. May peace be with every single one of you. Thank you.